Good morning. It's July 21st, 2022. Welcome to Triggered. I'm Cory Morgan. This is the Western Standards Daily Live broadcast. As you can see, I guess you're already here. There could be some first-time visitors. We run this show every day from 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time till about 1 p.m. Depends on the guest, depends on the conversation. Some of the fun things with being live is that we'll just take it where it goes. And of course, the challenges are they don't always go where we want it to. But I always like a little bit of chaos and anarchy, and live sort of broadcasts give us that opportunity. So if you're tuning in, I appreciate it. Good to see you checking in. We've got that comment scroll on the right. Some of it will tie in a little bit to what I'm going to rant about later when it comes to internet anonymity. It's a good conversation. I think people get confused whenever I talk about it, saying that I'd want to enforce people to show their identities or anything like that. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the government bringing in more laws, and I'm not talking about it's choice, guys. It's always choice. I just think there's room to allow choice so we can get rid of some of the bad sides of internet anonymity, even though I do understand some people choose it for very good reasons. But we'll get into that a little later. Okay, a couple of daily observances. I'd like to get those going while people are all getting lined up and checking in for the show today. And we got a couple of very big and important ones today. So to start with, we got the Invite an Alien to Live With You Day. And they aren't talking about Mexicans who swam across the river down in the southern into the States or anything like that. No, we're talking about those green, strange people from other planets. This one came about, I guess, from Mork and Mindy way back, for people who can remember that far back. That's where, it's a TV series, and I'm forgetting his name. A recently passed comedian. I get the weirdest name brain farts, and I mean, come on, this is a big name here. Robin Williams, there we go, with Mork and Mindy, if people remember that. Anyhow, there's a day with Invite an Alien to Live With You, and this is the day to celebrate it. So if you do actually know one out there, they're sneaking out there, they're living in the garbage or somewhere, bring them into your house. Not only is it a nice thing to do to the alien, but you might have a fodder for a new sitcom, you know? I mean, it's been a while since Alf. It's also Take a Monkey to Lunch Day. So again, if you keep strange circles and whatnot, well, this is the day you will take that monkey and take them out for lunch. Give them a bite. See what monkeys want to eat that day. I don't know what monkeys are into. I guess the stereotypes, bananas and such and everything. They'll probably rip your face off if they get half a chance too. But if you're really into monkeys and you know one, today's the day you got to take one to lunch. Or if you want to avoid the lunch problems, just send them a card or something. And the other day, which I got to talk about, and that one's 15 years ago today. A beautiful woman made a crazy decision and wed herself to me. So it's my 15th anniversary with Jane, and thankfully she's got terrible taste in men, and it's paid off really well for me so far and still carries on. So yes, I want to take advantage of the show to point out and celebrate I've had 15 fantastic years with a beautiful woman, and I'm hoping I can have decades more. And I'm a lucky man. I love you, Jane, and thanks for putting up with me this long. Of course, it's probably a day Jane's not watching the show anyways, but at least I said it, damn it, and it is recorded. So again, happy anniversary, and as I said, it's happy for me. I'm lucky, and it's been one of the best things that have ever happened to me. All right, let's get on to less sappy stuff and see what else we're going to talk about today. We've got Dr. Amoriza Gunnink on, and she's a private childcare provider with preschool and things such as that. And she wants to talk about, and we're going to talk about the impacts, because of course we've got a national daycare policy, that big $10 a day daycare policy. How's that impacting our providers? How's it impacting parents? Things such as that, because it seems to be just a lot of money thrown out blindly, and it's not doing kids or providers a bit of good. So we're going to talk to her about that. And then our Edmonton legislative reporter, Arthur Green, is going to come on. He's that guy with that fantastic Newfie accent, but he watches the Alberta issues. And the UCP race, at least one of the bars passed yesterday. It sounds like 7 of them are still hanging in there, and a couple others got cut. And we'll talk about who's remaining in the race and who isn't and where it's going to go. We'll talk about some other Alberta issues in general. Okay, I'm going to get on to that anonymity thing I was talking about. And just a bit of a rant, you know? So, I mean, discourse on social media can be pretty ugly, and it happens on every platform. I mean, I even go to beekeeping forums where people start fighting with each other and calling her names. You know, It's unreal. And people are called every name in the book. They can be shamed, slandered, have their personal information posted by others. I mean, it gets bad. Extremists, and they happen on every end of the political spectrum. They use social media to spread their vile messages and sometimes organize violent and destructive actions. And the common denominator, though, with pretty much all of those extreme accounts, the bad ones, is that they're anonymous. And that is the root of a lot of problems. Most of us play reasonably. Sure, we get worked up now and then and say regrettable things online, but there's a population out there comprised of anonymous trolls, and they're a tiny minority, but they can dominate and destroy discourse. I mean, the time they got in their hands, they can obsessively post and spawn accounts faster than accounts can be banned. They're cowards, and the only thing that's going to stop them is to take away the shroud of anonymity they hide behind. In a relatively recent incident, and I like bringing this one up, there was a self-styled Twitter ninja out there who would vitriolically and tirelessly troll public figures online. He bragged of the number of elected officials who'd blocked him. He felt courageous and bold. He felt he was an online warrior for the left. Well, then he was exposed. Yeah, somebody figured out who he really was, and the transformation was instant. That was what was striking. Suddenly, he was an apologetic pussycat. He did an interview, and he was just all meek and apologetic. Now, he's still online, but he's very subdued, because without the craven cloak of anonymity, he really is nothing. He tweets under the name Neil before Zod, if you wanted to have a look at it, and or check back into that sad little story. Now, I'm not big on doxing folks, but the tale of poor Neil did prove a valuable point. The loss of anonymity defangs trolls. And I understand there's a lot of people who are anonymous for very good reasons, and we don't need to take the ability to be anonymous away. Another problem, though, is people are leaving social media platforms because they just can't handle the rage and venom anymore. And selective culling of people with conservative views is starting to create echo chambers, and that's no good either. Gab, unfortunately, part of the reason it hasn't really done that well is because it's just a bunch of people saying the same old stuff to each other. What I'd like to see is a platform that verifies users. And it's understandable. Again, like I said, people want to keep their anonymity. I mean, they could have issues with their job. They could be stalked by weirdos. There's a lot of things when you put your name out there. But it doesn't mean your name has to be out there. It just means there should be a way to verify that you're real. You can only form one account, one verified account with a different colored check mark next to it or something like that. And again, leave it to private business to do it. I'm not talking about regulating it. Verification doesn't assure that a person has to be nice. I mean, my Twitter account's verified. I got that precious blue check mark, but I'm still an asshole. I mean, it doesn't have to stop you. It just means that you've got to be within reason. And if you go beyond reason and you actually get dangerous or abusive or, attack people, then you could potentially be charged. We don't need more laws. We don't need speech police. We just need some voluntary controls on social media platforms that would eliminate the anonymity, which cloaks the small but damaging troll army out there. Because right now, it's giving the government excuses to try and step in. And we might see speech being limited by the state before people realize that it didn't need to get done. Rights are really hard to regain once we lose them. So let's hope the private market can step up on this one before the government does. Musk was talking about doing something like that. And as I'm saying, coffee breath conversations, no more laws. I never said we want more laws. Never. Don't worry, that's not what I'm saying. Like Elon Musk wanted to do, private industry can fill the void. We can do it, guys. All right, that's what's got me going today. Let's get on. It's been a while and check in with our news editor, Dave Naylor, and see what else is making news today. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Good morning, Cory. Do I take it by that grovelingly sappy message to Jane that you actually forgot it today?
I haven't forgotten it. I even had the picture. I might not have bought anything. This is a cheap gift, Hey, look at you got a plug on the Cory Morgan there, the Triggered Show. But hey, I didn't forget this time. I got Facebook.
That's the gift that keeps on giving. So my parents are visiting from BC, and talking to my mom this morning, they're thinking of packing up and moving into a hotel. They just say they can't take it anymore because of those darn chickadees. They're starting to chirp at 4 a.m. in the morning, and they have no clue how I live with it. And my mom's thinking of investing in a slingshot to try and deal with the problem.
Well, that'll keep her busy there. Go for it. Just be ready to buy some windows.
Yeah, so just so people may have thought I was exaggerating. I'm certainly not. They're chickadees from hell. But lots of stuff on the website this morning, Cory. Those clowns at the Bank of Canada that have no clue how to keep inflation down managed to give themselves huge bonuses, millions and millions of dollars worth over COVID. So job well done, guys, and we'll all go out and have our money worth 8.1% less. Speaking of which, the CBC did the same sort of thing. Millions of dollars in bonuses to staff, averaged about 15,000 apiece. So nice work if you can get it. Arthur Green, whose name you mentioned, has a story out of Edmonton on the killer of a 19-month-old has been released on day parole after serving only a third of his 9-year sentence. Apparently, he had a bit of a tough time in jail and had to be segregated, and because of that, they've sprung him. 2/3 of the time still left on his sentence for that horrible crime. And speaking of horrible crimes, the truck driver involved in the Humboldt bus crash has been granted day parole. You remember he pled guilty after that horrible thing, and he's now out also on day parole. Edmonton Oilers owner Mr. Katz is in some legal difficulties south of the border. A 17-year-old ballerina from the States is alleging he paid to have sex with her. So that's a very interesting story that we'll have to keep an eye out on. And our Dave Makachuk has a longing look back in the glory days of air travel around the time of, Ward Air, where you can actually go on and be welcomed by a smiling flight attendant and eat your lunch or dinner off cutlery with actual knives and forks and all that good stuff that used to happen when you fly that, of course, is no longer available to us. You're just lucky if your luggage arrives on the same continent as you do these days, Cory. So we've got that. Our Eva Suddick is just wrapping up a good exclusive on the 19 Calgary firefighters have launched a lawsuit against the city of Calgary for their actions during the COVID-19 pandemic. And Eva's got exclusive interviews with 3 of them, and they lay out their reasons behind why they're suing. So that'll be coming up shortly, and it's definitely worth a read, Cory.
Great. Well, lots on the go going on out there. Let's see if folks have missed you. Some of them, they're welcoming you back, and others with offering tips like using biodegradable pellets with an airsoft gun for your chickadee problem. So, there's a solution to everything online if we talk about it long enough.
I was thinking of blasting them with opera music at 4 a.m., but I'm not sure the neighbors would be appreciative.
Yeah, you might trade one problem for another that way.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks, Dave. I'll let you get back at it. I'll see you after the show.
Thanks, Cory.
All right. So that is our news editor, Dave Naylor, and he is out there making sure we have the good stuff, the stories, the exclusives, and are staying on top of things, guys. And the reason we can do that, this is that part of the show, yes, where I nag you all to subscribe. And I know most of you guys who are viewing today already have subscriptions, but for the couple who may not, this is, the opportunity to do it. Guys, $10 a month, $99 for a year, and this is how we can stay independent. This is why we don't ask for tax dollars, because we rely on you guys as members. And you've been doing great. That's why we've been expanding. That's why we've got reporters across the country, new gear, stuff going, getting better all the time. Consider taking out a subscription if you haven't already, guys. It's really important. We're not asking for charity. We're talking about you paying for a service that we provide. And of course, the more people subscribe, the better the product we're going to be able to get out there for you. So again, thank you to all you people who have subscribed already. Oh, I said you people. That could be a problem. And if you haven't already, get on it. Come on, guys. Help me pay those bills. I got to nag Derek for a raise eventually, but we got to get more subscriptions before that can happen. All right. So yeah, some of those news items. It's been interesting, with the air travel. I haven't read that one yet. Dave Makachuk is actually going to be on tomorrow, and we're going to talk about a few of his columns, and that's one that we can certainly talk about. And I know he'd been flying recently too. Perhaps he talks about that a bit in his column. And it's really changed. It's like Dave mentioned, with Ward Air. I remember flying on that once when I was a kid. And we're talking real cutlery, real meals. Flying was made to be a comfortable endeavor. And nowadays, you get on a plane, you're squashed on like a sardine, you're herded through like cattle. But it's a bit of a mixed thing, right? It's cost benefit. Back then, when you'd fly with Ward Air, that was a very big expenditure for a family or an individual. Flying back then was something you didn't take casually. Like when you look at the cost to fly, then today versus what it was back in those days, it's way, way lower. I mean, people are demanding to be able to get across the country or out of the country at a much lower rate than they ever had before. So, I mean, that's brought it down to people. You don't have to be rich to be somebody who flies anymore, although it helps. But you certainly lose a lot of those comforts. Now it's a matter of being squished in there and, have that little bag of peanuts thrown at you and have your luggage lost and surly people at the front gate. So it's a balance, right? I guess if you want to spend enough, you can get to first class. But the airports are a catastrophe all over the world, particularly in Canada right now. I mean, we're seeing the stories all the time with the delays, the crowds, the lost luggage, the nightmares. It's not doing the tourism industry a lick of good these days. I'm looking forward to some travel this winter, but I'm going to drive south like I did last winter. To hell with dealing with all that airline stuff. Of course, the cost of gas will make that pretty cheap as well. Let's see, was Joe Snake there? So let's look at the comments, saying won't subscribe because there might be separatists and he hates separatists. Okay. Well, a separate Alberta might have a better education system, so we could have better literacy among commenters. And Joe won't be, embarrassing himself with that sort of semi-English sort of thing on a comment scroll on a live show. But all the same, if you subscribe to the paper, to the publication, it doesn't mean, of course, you share the ideology of every other subscriber or any columnist who might write within it. So I'm sorry if the separatists among the Western Standard might not be the one you want to keep company with, but I guess there might be a few in there. What are you going to do? Some people I don't like, and this segues in CBC. Dave mentioned that. So here we are tightening our belts. We've got, tough times. Inflation's flying up. The interest rates are shooting up. And meanwhile, CBC execs, they're getting bonuses, $30 million. The equivalent for these executives of $15,000 each. Nice work if you can get it. Nice work. $30 million in bonuses. We're all struggling. This is the CBC that was groveling and sniveling and whining and crying during the pandemic that they needed more bailout money. I think it was another $21 million they suckled out of the taxpayers' teat during the pandemic, on top of the $1.5 billion they get a year from the taxpayers. And how are they spending it? Bonuses. Great bonuses, eh? Nice. See, over 1,000 of their employees got bonuses, well over $14,520 each. And there's your tax dollars at work, right? I mean, the CBC radio was howling, oh my God, we had to lay off 11 staff in their international division, and they needed another $21 million bailout. Come on, guys, it just never stops. People, we're getting robbed. We're getting robbed by the civil service on so many levels, by government that cannot run anything competently. The airport mess that's going on is one thing. Another thing is the passports. I keep bringing that up. Or other what is it? Immigration is backlogged now by millions and millions of people. They can't process the immigrants trying to come into the country. Basically, every level of the bloated government bureaucracy is failing. We're spending record amounts. We've massively increased spending, public spending, and tax spending throughout this country. And what are we getting for it? Worse service, worse and worse service all the time. And it's going to collapse. I mean, as inflation goes up, the government keeps bloating. I mean, speaking is stupid. And you know what? I'm not going to talk about Trudeau this time. He's not the only idiot out there. He's among them, though. I'm going to talk about his little subservient partner, Jagmeet Singh. He got ratioed beautifully on a tweet the other day. And what a ratio means is if you're throwing something out there on Twitter, and rather than having people hit the like button, you get overwhelmed with a bunch of people commenting because what you said was so profoundly wrong, offensive, or stupid that they just had to step in and say, you're an idiot. And that's the case of Singh. It's an NDP policy, a federal one they're pushing. They're demanding that the Liberals immediately give everybody in Canada $1,000 to help with inflation. You'd think it was something out of the Beaverton or the Onion to hear this. And it really demonstrates just how economically illiterate and incompetent the NDP are. Not only is not sounding a hell of a lot better in Alberta, but just better than this one. When you're saying inflation's a crisis, okay, you figured that one out, Jagmeet. Good work, good work. It needs to be addressed. Okay, we can go with that, Jagmeet. And we're going to reach into everybody's pockets, pull out $1,000 and give it back to them to fix it. Okay, Jagmeet, you kind of blew it there. You kind of lost the narrative there because it's our money. You're talking about helping us deal with inflationary pressures by taking money from us and giving it back to us. It doesn't work that way, you ass clown. And what it will do, of course, is just cause more disruption. Where are you going to get it from? You're going to raise taxes immediately? That'll do wonders for the economy. That'll help us out in spending or getting by. Or are you going to borrow it? And again, I know it's asking a lot, but just read some rudimentary economics and understand what happens when the government keeps printing money, because that's essentially all government borrowing really is. It's just printing more money and flushing it out there. You're not helping anything. But that is the man that partnered with Trudeau, the unholy alliance, to continue to, try and manage this country through a pandemic and inflation and all these crises. It's a sad outcome, guys, a sad thing. Let's hope the Conservative Party of Canada can manage to get their stuff together enough to unseat this government. I mean, we had Trudeau. He's already, like I said, prancing around the country, looking like he's getting ready for another campaign. And I mean, part of what will happen, here's some of the irony if we're talking about political play. One of the only reasons that Harper got the majority that he did and, held power for the while he did was because Jack Layton had a strong NDP and it split the Liberal vote. And that was a contributing factor towards it. And as long as Jagmeet Singh is as weak as he is, we're not going to... the Liberals are looking better and better. I mean, it's not just the Conservative Party, losing support or not doing strongly that might convince Justin to try and pull the pin and make a desperation run for an election in this fall. It's if the NDP collapses under the ridiculous leadership of Singh, same thing, that could lead to a Liberal majority. And he desperately wants that majority. He wants it so bad. I mean, he's, like I said the other day, he's only got one kick left at the cat. He really does. I mean, if he gets another minority, the party is going to chuck him out, whether he likes it or not. So he could sit there and do this slow death for the next 3 years in a partnership with Singh, or he can wait. And it might not happen this fall, but I think they're waiting. They're just sitting on the edge to pounce whenever they think they might be able to call the election and get a majority, because that's the only thing they'll save his butt. And he's got no legacy. Here he is, Pierre Trudeau, loathsome as he is an established part of Canadian history, and he has some legacy, which, most of us in the West think is a terrible one, but all the same, he has one. But Justin has nothing. What's he got? He's the guy who ran the government and declared the War Measures Act against, bouncy castles. That's not a good legacy. He ran us into the mess of inflation and overspending we're in. Not a good legacy. I'm sure he would like to get a majority so he can come up with some sort of large project and program that's going to last that he could shove through and get in there. But he needs a majority to do it. Diana's saying he legalized pot. Yeah. I don't think that's going to make world history, but he did do that. And I don't think that was one of his worst moves, actually. That wasn't such a bad policy out of him. He's had a lot worse than that. But I think he wants something more. And he knows, he's not a brilliant man, but he knows if he can't win another majority, this is it. This is his final term. And he's going to do whatever he can to try and get it. So we're in for some ugly and unstable politics for a while. And here we go. Let's see more of their money, our money going out there. This is a federal agency mandated to counter slow economic growth in Quebec. I love it when federal agencies get tasked for something. They do such a good job with it. Canada Economic Development. It's like Calgary Economic Development, in other words, which again, what these are? Slush funds full of bureaucrats taking your money and giving it to buddies. That's typically what it tends to be. Doesn't help the taxpayers. Really good if you're on the inside track, though. And this is the Canada Economic Development for Quebec regions. In a series of briefing notes, it said its mandate was to create jobs. And they've got, these guys, though, they put Calgary to shame. $2.4 billion in subsidies for 4,900 projects. Billion is what this group has put out. But a recent one, they found $10 million in subsidies for a tennis tournament in Montreal. Yes, a tennis tournament. And here's some of it. The idea was to draw media attention to the province. I didn't even know it happened. Did anybody else see it? I guess the media coverage didn't surface, or at least not a hell of a lot. I guess they're kind of getting it now, but not in the way they want to. It's just showing they wasted our money. We have a broken broken system in Canada, guys. We're getting milk dry, and they're running us into the ground. So you wonder why there's movements for independence out here? We'll see. That's a column I just put up today. I edit the columns, and one from Allred, Ken Allred. And he was an MLA with, I believe it was in Ralph Klein's time there. And he's come right out and said, it's the last gasp. We either got to get a Sovereignty Act, do something, distance ourselves, or it's just time. The West has to get out. The West wants out. And this was a guy who was pretty federalist in the past. He talked about that, and he's just had enough. He's been watching politics for a long time. He was one of the original reformers. And he's said enough is enough, and he's on the way out. So we're seeing that more and more. We're seeing more of that, people saying it's time to go nuclear with this. It's time to get out. We're running out of options, and it's not a minority conversation any longer. It's coming out from established politicians, established public figures. They've had enough. And this UCP race, it's getting ugly. I'm going to talk a bit more with Green about that. It seems like I'm rambling a bit. Looks like I might have another guest standing me up. That'll be 2 for this week. The joys of a live show. But we do what we can. And so I'll just talk to you guys some more, and we'll carry on until we get to our next one. There's always lots to talk about. Let's look at the other federal front. The Conservative Party of Canada has decided to hold a third debate now. And I guess they asked their members, 24,000 responded to a poll, so they overwhelmingly want a third debate. They want to listen to them one more time. Sometime today, I guess they're going to release the difference. All right. See, now, Joe Snake, I'm going to sidetrack this. This commenter is over trolling it. He's anonymous, of course, because he's a coward. And he's just sitting there trying to disrupt things. But you see, watch this. Block user. There, did it. Now Joe can go talk to himself. So, there are ways, to control adverse media discussion going on. And, somebody, I was talking on Twitter a little bit about that. I'll get back to the UCP race, but as I'm live, I just kind of go where it's going. As I see Diana's asking who's hosting it. It'll be the party hosting it. So, somebody else had said on Twitter, hey, I've got the power to just get out there and block people. We don't need media to social media to give the ability to verify accounts and things like that. See, it's not a matter of needing. Yeah, it's not a matter of mandating. Everybody's minds always go towards, he's proposing a law or a rule. No, I'm not. Like I said, I liked what Parler was trying. They had that different tiers. You had like a public figure check mark that might have been blue or whatever it was, and you had a red one. If a person voluntarily said, I'm willing to prove my identity to this social media platform, they trusted enough to do so. Again, everything's voluntary. But they still want to have their, fake name out front. That's fine. But they can only register one account with that check mark because it's been verified. So it's not like they can have 20 accounts. And if they cross the line, if they go too far, they can be held accountable. And if you don't want to do it, you could have an anonymous account with no check mark whatsoever. But then you can choose, I don't want to interact with any of the anonymous ones, perhaps. The fully anonymous. I mean, the other ones are still anonymous, but they've had to verify. Does everybody trust sending their information to that private entity? No, not everybody. But guess what? You got your ID going out there all over the place all the time. Whether you've bought something online, whether you've registered for something, it doesn't matter. And potentially, yes, it could always get hacked and released. It's always a risk of living day to day now. And, one analogy I'll use was when I used to play online poker. I don't do it so much anymore, but for a while when it was really big too, it used to be really, before they banned it in the States, it was pretty fun. You get in those tournaments and there'd be thousands of people. And boy, I did really well. Because one of the things I found was you go in the free tournaments where you don't have to pay any money to get in. Pointless, just pointless. Everybody just goes all in, all in, all in, all in. They don't play it seriously. They don't care. They don't have anything in the game. And anybody can just sign up an account and play the free tournaments. You go into a tournament where even $1 is the entry. And it's amazing how much different the play in the tournament becomes. Because whoever is in that tournament actually had to put some money into an account, even if it's just a little bit. They actually had to register. And suddenly, with a little bit of stake in the game, their play became way, way better. Now, again, the play at the $1 level versus the $100 level was still dramatically different, but the huge difference between the free and the even $1. Because again, that full I'll just sign up on a whim and do something and play with it and make a mess is gone. And that can apply as well. I'm not talking about charging for social media accounts, but I'm just talking about having social media platforms that allow different types of verification so that you can get rid of these things. I mean, Musk was talking about that. Part of how, whether it was always his intention or not to just get in and out of the Twitter deal, but he's saying they won't provide the information to tell just how many fake bots and troll accounts and all that crap are in there. Thus, I mean, it's true. It's an asset. I mean, the asset of any of these social media accounts is the accounts. It's the followers, these businesses. If you can prove you have 500 million real people engaged in it, that's worth a lot. If it turns out 20% of those people are fake, well, then it's not worth that much, is it? And Twitter wouldn't share that openly with them. But he was also talking before, when he's talking about purchasing, some of the changes he'd like to make is finding ways to flush out those fake accounts and give some abilities for other people to verify themselves. And so, I mean, there's room to change things, and it doesn't have to take law. I'm just talking about watching social media evolve and hope that something reasonable can come along. Because again, it's as long as it's voluntary. I mean, Shane Fitzgibbon saying, what about sending your ID to Facebook? I know somebody who's being forced to use Facebook Protect. I don't know. I mean, if you don't trust Facebook, don't. It's up to you. I mean, there's some people, they pull out their wallet on a whim and give their ID to some of the worst things online, whatever it might be. AB Freesing won't be signing up for anything that asks for ID online, whether it's from a government fascist or big tech fascist. Well, don't. I'm not saying you have to, but I won't take the anonymous accounts as seriously as the real ones. That's all. And again, I'm not saying a person doesn't have good, legitimate reasons to remain anonymous. Of course they might. But give us the means. Because right now I'm getting sick of blocking. And I do. I block without hesitation when they're going too nuts online. But either way, and Jet Gorgon, not ID, Alberta, never. Okay. So do you guys buy nothing online ever? Have you never purchased anything online? Have you never purchased a ticket to an event? You've never subscribed to anything like the Western Standard? You've never purchased an item from Amazon or, any of those things? Ever? Never? I mean, if you haven't, power to you. But the thing is, you're sharing your ID out there all the time. Pick and choose. You still want to be careful with it, but it's already happening, guys. And it's kind of unavoidable. But as long as it's voluntary, that's up to the individuals. Getting back to the Conservative race, speaking of hopefully somebody will be able to come in and free us from Trudeau's reign. I guess there's going to be a debate held in August at some point. They said they'll release the details of the timing. And something that's interesting, under their party rules, they say it's mandatory for leadership contestants to attend official debates or they'll face fines. So, because something we tried at the Western Standard that was a bit of a frustration, we tried to get a debate going out here, and it led to a lot of problems. And it was, due to one of the perceived front runners refusing to come out to the debate. When you can't get the front runner, then it's hard to get the others, and it just leads to a lot of problems. So these party ones, these official party ones, they make it mandatory. You have to attend or you're going to get fined. So it sounds like there will be one that all of the remaining candidates anyways, I mean, Patrick Brown's off trying to, desperately keep his job out there as a mayor of Brampton, but the rest of them will show up for that one in August. It'll be interesting because it's what was I about to say? Those first two debates were so bizarrely different from each other. One wasn't an official one anyways, that first one. But it was very vitriolic and yelling and a little divisive. And then the second one was just bizarre, with those sad trombones and strange things like that and everything. So we'll see what they come up with for a third option. I think, they're probably there's not too many people paying attention to the debate right now, and they got to make sure that to the leadership that something else will bring it about. As Tyler's saying, hopefully this will be better than the last one. Let's see. Okay, well, there's some interesting comments going on anyways. AB Free. So you take my comments less seriously because my name isn't AB Free. Yes, I do, actually. Not to say I don't take them seriously whatsoever. You say some good things. You've been a regular commenter, and I appreciate it. And you're not abusive to people, and you give reasoned comments. One of the things that gets lost in social media comments, though, if you're anonymous, is anecdotes, personal experiences. And again, it's your choice, AB Free, not to put it out there, and that's fine, and I respect the choice. But it does undercut things. Like I get some of those comments, when you get into, and I've learned, I don't even bother engaging them anymore. When somebody, an anonymous account will say, I know this because I work in this industry, or because I've done that, or because I know this. Well, if you're not going to prove who you actually are, you can make anything up. You can say I was an astronaut. You can say I'm a brain surgeon, whatever. If you're not really got your name there, I don't know if I can believe that. So it doesn't lend credibility necessarily. It doesn't mean the person behind that account isn't an astronaut. They might be. But when the anonymity is there, a little bit of credibility gets lost. It's not like I dismiss every anonymous account out there. Not at all. And I know people get really sensitive when I talk about this every time. I'm not saying people can't be anonymous. I'm not saying they don't have reasons to choose to be anonymous, but it's a problem for some. And I'm looking at ways that you can filter that amount. That's all. And again, there's, let's see, Linda saying, Cory, you talk about TELUS selling their customers' info and tracking to the government. I think there should be a class action suit. Yeah, invasions of privacy. We got all sorts of problems. There's that. That's part of it is, again, we don't have much anonymity, even if we think we do or want to be. I wouldn't be shocked if a lot, again, people are being a lot more tracked with their online activities than they think they are. And is likewise with the banks, sharing people's information for the sake of Trudeau's panicked invocation of the Emergencies Act. Our information is not nearly as private as it should be. Apps that kids had to use for online learning were also gathering information on the kids, and it was being sold. Not personal stuff like a picture of the kid and which household they live in and everything, but generalized data. And again, it's an abuse of our privacy. But either I'm just talking about online discourse. I'm talking about discussions that happen online. This has been happening forever. People look back in the early days of internet forums or the new Usenet. That was essentially just a giant internet forum to begin with. That was the start of the internet. And it used to be terribly vitriolic on there. But also that's where Godwin's law came about. And I can't remember, I'm probably going to slaughter it when I paraphrase it. But it's when he talked about, whenever there's an internet discussion, the probability of somebody eventually referring to Nazis or calling somebody a Nazi or a Hitler comparison pretty much become, it's a done deal. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And it's true. Whether it's a forum about kittens or, as I said, even beekeeping, we watch people get fighting. And almost 99% of the time, the one stirring the pot, the one making the mess, the one going bananas is an anonymous one. So this is just a way to reduce it. It's not a cure, but the total free-for-all can be a mess. And again, just make sure it's always choice. That's what's important out there. Jane Price saying, who changes their last name with same-sex marriages? I guess whoever the hell they want to. It's back to choice. I don't care. Change your name, keep your old one. It's a question out of the blue. But, we're having conversations with the commenters since I got stood up by a guest. So let's look at some of the other things. Speaking of Amazon, actually, this one's kind of interesting, and I like to see where this might go. This is I talk about, private healthcare and getting better advancements. I've always showing how the public sector sure is inefficient and runs things terribly, from passport renewals to immigration to pretty much anything. They suck. Well, they've got the monopoly on our healthcare provision in Canada. That's why we've got one of the shittiest healthcare systems on earth. And they won't allow competition in. Well, Amazon just said they're going to buy One Medical. It's a primary care organization for almost $4 billion. So now Amazon's actually going to expand into healthcare provision. What an unusual expansion. But whether you like or dislike Amazon, or Bezos, they've been a game changer in business, in the world. They started as a website that basically sold books, and they've expanded into an empire. They're incredible with what they're into, everything from Amazon Prime television streaming to, of course, it's hard to see anybody's doorstep without an Amazon delivery on there anymore. And now they're looking to get into some healthcare. And I think it's brilliant. I want to see what they're going to do with it, because now we're going to apply creative, outside the box thinking from a company that's there to disrupt, not disrupt in a bad way, but to shake up the status quos. And I'm just really going to be watching this very closely. And they're talking about how they want to reinvent the healthcare experience, from everything from things like booking an appointment to taking trips to the pharmacy. And I mean, some of those things that a private industry could fix a lot faster. And I know doctors' clinics are predominantly private anyways in Canada, even if they're publicly funded. But I mean, they can come up with all sorts of, Amazon's going to come up with apps, I imagine, ways to safely renew prescriptions, things like that. We're creeping along in the socialized system we have towards some of those advancements. But I got a feeling Amazon, if they get into the game, are going to be a lot faster and more targeted, and be able to bring in some of these reforms, better than the others. So I'm pretty excited watching this happen. Plus, it's south of the border, so hey, if it really goes to hell, it won't be our problem anyways. It's the American one. But it's because the Americans allow these private enterprise to come in and do different things and enter the market, we can get more innovative things coming along and changing the game. I mean, we can't learn if it's all under one system with a monopoly. I see Arthur idling in there in the background. Maybe I'll pop him in. And if he's ready to roll there, we'll start talking about some of the stuff Arthur's been covering and talk about that United Conservative Party race. So let's pull him in and have a conversation and see how it's going there. Hey, Arthur, how's it going?
Not too bad. Enjoying the sunny weather here in Bonnyville today.
Oh, good. I see your internet seems to have improved for now. I mean, at the staff meeting this morning, it was horrible.
Yeah, the person outside in the poll is no longer in the poll, so maybe that had something to do with it. But on another note, Cory, yesterday marked the last day for people to register with Elections Canada to run for the Alberta's United Conservative Party leadership. And we have some candidates confirmed: Brian Jean, Danielle Smith, and Travis Taze. Of course, were confirmed ahead of Wednesday's deadline. John Horseman did tweet that he was on track to meet the deadline with signatures, but quickly withdrew on Wednesday afternoon and said it was a crowded leadership race. So that's one of the reasons that he withdrew. And of course, there are results still pending, and we'll bring you up to speed with those as soon as they come in.
Yeah, so sounds like 7 of them at least have made the bar, or they're saying they are. That next bar, I guess, is being fully approved. It's got to go before the UCP's leadership committee for them to sign off on it. But I mean, if they've gotten the money and the signatures, I mean, those are some very major bars to accomplish first, right?
That's right. Again, like it has to, they have to be approved. Like you said, now the race is heating up. I've reported this week that it started to turn into a little bit of a slugfest between Danielle Smith and Travis Taze. And there's a story on our website about how Taze actually texted the UCP party blast text, whatever they use, and said that she was for PST when she says she's clearly not. So again, we'll see what happens in the future. I know Danielle Smith does have a rally planned for Bonnyville this weekend, and I was in touch with Brian Jean's press secretary on a daily basis, and he's going to be coming out with some of his policy decisions in the near future.
Okay, yeah, I had both Russ Sherman and John Horseman on the show just a couple of days ago, so they're getting right up on the deadline, I guess, trying to get their signatures. But I know, Horseman's saying he had enough, but he stuff to get in, but he just didn't feel the race was a bit too crowded. I don't know. Everybody makes their route. They always leave politics to spend more time with their family and everything else too. I suspect he entered a little bit too late and just couldn't quite get it that fast, because he came in pretty late in the game there and just kind of needed an out.
Yeah, he actually stated on Twitter that he looks forward to future opportunities with the UCP party. So we'll see what the future holds for him.
Yeah, he's not stomping out the door, embittered or anything like that. He's just saying he's moving on. Have you heard anything from Ross Sherman since?
I haven't, but again, I will be reaching out to all of the candidates via email and waiting for the response. I know they're quite busy to talk to the media, on a constant basis, but in between, we've caught them in between meetings and stuff, and been able to get some responses. So I'm looking forward to actually covering the race once it begins, and we'll see who the new premier of Alberta is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a race. I mean, we do have the winner of this is going to become our premier. It's not like any other party race. I was talking to Reed Small out there in BC. They've got one going on in BC, and that'll be the same thing. Whoever wins that's going to become the premier with the NDP. But they've only got one contestant so far, and it sounds like they might only have one. I mean, quite different than what's going on out here.
Yeah, I mean, there's some big talk, with the Smith campaign and the Alberta Sovereignty Act, and she called out Justin Trudeau yesterday with his emission targets for 2030, saying that it's going to cut Alberta oil production, not just Alberta oil production, but all oil production in Canada by 2030, upwards of 46%, and the oil industry employs a lot of people across Canada, especially here in Alberta and Calgary. So, she really is looking forward to pushing that act if she becomes premier. And then, we have Brian Jean, who's been voicing actively his opinion on gas prices here in Alberta, and saying, Albertans are getting ripped off. So we'll see what he brings to the table, and what's going to happen in the next few weeks.
How about Rajan Sani? I had her on the show a while back, and I just don't hear anything going on with her campaign. I don't hear of events. I mean, something must be happening out there.
I haven't heard much from her campaign at all, actually. Like I said, I will be reaching out again today now that the deadline has passed to put a push on, getting the latest information for our readers, because that's why they follow us, Cory, is for the latest and the most truthful information. So, like I said, now that the deadline is passed, I can really put the pedal down, as we say in Newfoundland, and try to get some comments and some different decisions and things they're saying. Twitter is always a good place to hang out, because you never know what's going to be tweeted during the day by a politician.
Well, that's it. I mean, you can catch the stuff as it breaks on Twitter. It's just not necessarily the best spot for the exchanges of ideas. Well, moving on from that, then we look at some of the other stories you've been writing on. The recent one, I mean, that's kind of a rough one, but the parole board has released that gentleman who would, with a child who died that he left outside of a church.
Yeah, that's correct. They made a decision on Wednesday to release him from the Edmonton Remand Center. Basically, he was granted parole, and he only served 2/3 of his sentence. The parole board, said that he had a difficult upbringing in a First Nations community. He is Indigenous, Cory, and that he was getting treated pretty badly in prison, and there are reports that inmates took it in their own hands to give him a warm welcome while in prison for committing a crime against a child. And they said that the conditions that he was experiencing, he spent most of the time in the hole, but they kind of gave him a little bit of leeway and granted his parole. Now he's going to be supervised. I guess he'll be residing at a halfway house, as we call it in Edmonton, somewhere where he will be supervised. And it just amazes me sometimes, Cory, when we see different headlines. It was a serious crime. The child was essentially beat to death with a blow to the head, and then left outside of a church in Edmonton. Pretty sad. And he only served 2/3 of the sentence. And a lot of people, I've been reading some comments on the story today, and a lot of people, said, this isn't justice. And then others are saying, well, the only justice he got was from the beatings he received from other inmates while in the center. So, like I said, he's been released, and we'll see if he reoffends.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest fear. I mean, I don't like to think of prisons just being a place where we can offload and have people beaten by other prisoners. It's not really a civilized way of dealing with things. But if they present a danger, the goal is to keep those people out of society so they don't reoffend. I mean, this guy killed a 19-month-old child. That sounds very dangerous to me, and he only did 3 years for it. Let's just hope, I guess, that he doesn't reoffend. Those excuses, I mean, this guy had a hard upbringing. He had a tough time. Probably very true, but it doesn't mean he's not dangerous.
Exactly, Cory. And like I said, there's lots of people in Canada who have had tough upbringings and rough childhoods, and they don't kill people.
No, and our justice system is unfortunately anything but. I'm just kind of moving down through your scroll, though. I see Rachel Notley calling for inflation relief. That's interesting. I always like that when I see NDP talking economics. What's she proposing that's going to help us all?
She never really proposed a whole lot, Cory. I think it was more or less just her speaking her mind to get media's attention. I noticed that when a big story comes out, such as the one with inflation and 8.9%, I do believe was or 8.1% was the figure, 8.4 here in Alberta, and she's immediately calling for inflation relief. Even though our readers are pretty smart here at the Western Standard, and they don't forget politics and what happened in the past. So there were a lot of comments on the story saying the NDP were the start or that created some of these problems when they were in power years ago. But she is calling for inflation relief. She thinks that Albertans are having a tough time putting food on the table, and with the price of everything, Cory, from used cars to cars dealerships, we've seen the real pinch happen in the last couple of months. Especially since COVID happened in Canada. It'll be interesting to find out, what she says in the future. I find that she always speaks her opinion, of course, against being in the opposition against the UCP when something big happens, and we'll see what she proposes to reduce inflation impact in Alberta, Cory.
Well, that's it. That's the other half. I mean, okay, it's fine. You pointed out that Albertans are suffering under the high cost of living. I think we all kind of know that. But what are you going to do about it? We need to hear that second half of the conversation, Madam Notley. Well, maybe we'll see more as time goes. I was kind of ranting about that earlier, that her boss, Jagmeet Singh, and I know it chafes them when I say that, but those parties are literally tied constitutionally, so he is her boss. He proposed giving $1,000 to everybody in Canada to battle inflation, and he got roundly ripped to shreds on Twitter because of it, of course, because it's not really a good economic plan. But I guess at least he proposed something.
Like I said, at least the proof is in the pudding, as we say in Newfoundland, Cory. So $1,000 seems nice to say that, and seems nice on paper, but really, when you think about it, how far does $1,000 go? If you're driving a Dodge pickup, probably 4 tanks of gas right now in Canada.
Yeah, literally, actually. Oh, that's scary. Okay, well, let's look at some of the other policies yesterday. The UCP, speaking of things they put out, then they're talking about enhancing support for victims of crime, if we're on the justice end of thing. I mean, that's an area that gets forgotten a lot. We always focus on the perpetrator and forget that there's always a victim behind there somewhere too.
Yeah, that's right. They're partnered with the Red Deer Police to offer opiate assistance to people who are arrested, when they're first incarcerated. And, I applaud the UCP government for taking a stand and investing in a program like this, Cory, because, I have many off the record conversations as an investigative reporter, and I've spoke to the RCMP before, different members, not saying they're from Bonnyville, but different locations within Alberta, and they see the same people in the system over and over, catch and release, and addiction is. I don't quote me on percentage, but 90% of the time it's someone who's addicted to drugs and struggling with mental health, and the justice system is a revolving door sometimes for these people, and they're just trying to survive, and you don't judge the person, Cory, who's down and out, because when you're up, you never think you're going to be down again, and when you're down, you never think you're going to be up again, of course. And don't judge the person who's doing drugs on the side of the street because you haven't been in their shoes. So you don't know what they've been through. And I think it's a great program that, people who are struggling with drug addiction and mental abuse will now have a chance to go virtual with an organization here in Alberta when incarcerated to see, what is the root of the problem. It's just not petty crime and they like to steal. There's a reason behind the crime, and that's drugs, Cory.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we saw that in the South, and we saw that with the people who'd been repeatedly robbing my pub when I owned it, and or the fellow that Eddie Maurice shot while defending his family in southern Alberta years ago. That guy's a chronic reoffender, and he's almost every time he gets picked up, he's also in possession of meth. So, I mean, it's difficult, because, I mean, they're criminals, or they can act as criminals, and they can put people at risk. But at the same time, just throwing them in jail isn't solution enough either. You got to get them off the drugs because they're just going to keep reoffending. So, I mean, we got to look at more treatment. So it's always good to see more treatment options coming anyways, because that's the only way that's really going to break that cycle.
Yeah, and again, the federal government stepped up yesterday and announced that they'll be spending $40 million on Canadians who are addicted to substances.
So before I let you go, I pulled you in a little early, so I'll let you escape a little early too. But what else are you working on this week, for the way as we head towards the weekend?
I've got a couple things up my sleeve. I was just poking around on Twitter, and it appears that Joe Biden has announced that he's suffering from cancer. So I'm gonna dig into some international stories here this evening. I noticed a trans swimmer was just nominated for a Woman of the Year award. So that's another story that I'm sure our readers will have lots to say about. And again, I'll be talking with the press secretary from Brian Jean's campaign. I've reached out to Danielle Smith, and I'll do the same for Travis Toews. Maybe we can get some reactions now that it's official that they're in the leadership race for Premier of Alberta.
Great. Well, you'll have interesting political times, especially as it gets closer to the end of the race, and they start. Some of the candidates get desperate, and the gloves really start coming off. So,
well, we'll see if it turns into an old Donnybrook, as Downshire used to say.
Yeah, you bet. All right. Well, thank you for bringing us up to date and checking in, Arthur. And I'll enjoy things up there in the Gorham weather in Bonnyville, and we'll talk to you again later.
I'll be in Edmonton soon. Thanks, Cory.
Right on, thanks. So that's our Edmonton legislative reporter chief there, Arthur Green, and you see all sorts of his stories, of course, at the westernstandard.news, and he's covering all the provincial affairs up there. And this race, it's still evolving, essentially. I'm kind of surprised that 7 of them made it in. I thought with that high bar, 175,000 to get in there and all of those signatures required, I figured it was going to be more like 4 or 5. It looks like 7 of them have reached that bar, so there's a lot of big money out there to back some candidates. Now let's just hope we get a productive one of it. Right now, we're really only hearing of 2. It's mostly Toews and Danielle Smith, Travis Toews and Danielle Smith. And the other candidates are there, but they're not leading the conversation. And maybe as they, again, this gets going, they're going to have to try and find a way to jump into the mix and get some attention, which could be good or bad. Let's see here what else we got going on. All right, I'm just checking the comments. Scroll, and things are interesting. Something that Mike DeMoore saying prisons are unpleasant. We need action now. Yeah, I know. I mean, if it's beyond the pale, and if this guy's getting abused too much in there, then fix the prison problem, but don't let him out. And how cushy does it have to be? I do believe, as tempting as it is, especially with a guy who killed a child like him, it's hard to feel any sympathy. But we are a civilized society, or we like to think we are. And just throwing them to the animals isn't a civilized way to do it. But we got to fix it. But letting him out into the public is definitely not the way to do it either with that guy. That's just an awful story. So, getting back to the NDP, I want to lay out a little bit about how their party works, because as I said, it drives them nuts whenever I go into that. I've written blogs on that before, and I've talked on social media about it. They don't like to admit it, particularly here in Alberta. But the NDP is not like any other party in that they are subservient to the federal one. See, most of us who've never bought memberships to the NDP, wouldn't know this, but like any other party, if you bought a membership for the Liberals in Saskatchewan, it doesn't mean you're a member of Trudeau's Liberals in Ottawa, like I was with BC, or even in the old days when it was progressive conservatives in Alberta and progressive conservatives in Ottawa, same name, and the parties had association, but they were separate. You didn't. Now with the NDP, you buy a membership with Notley's NDP, you're automatically a member with Singh's NDP. You can't distinguish because it's all one party. They're socialists. They don't believe in spreading out authority. They don't believe in regional governance. You got to remember that. These are centralized governance people. These are authoritarians. Notley is actually a provincial representative of Singh. She has a degree of ability to act as a party leader and respond to local issues in Alberta. But if push comes to shove, and it's right in the NDP constitution, you can go look at it. Push comes to shove, the federal party comes out on top. So if she differs in policy from anything with the federal party, they will say, we're overriding you, you follow the federal line. No other party is like that. So again, when you think, and when you sounds like Notley standing up for our interests, keep in mind, she is subservient to Singh. So, and whoever the next federal leader of the NDP is as well. As well as that, their party is so convoluted, they also are basically beholden to the Alberta Federation of Labor. Yeah, the unions hold them by their short and curlies. They've actually got a number of guaranteed spots in their party governance roles that are given to the Alberta Federation of Labor. They have to have them within their party, and it's a huge amount of it. Basically, that the AFL has most of the ability to control anything in the NDP in Alberta. Notley, she's a voice. That's why she can sit on the side and beak off but not throw out a policy, because she's probably not allowed to put one out. She's got to talk to Gil McGowan and ask what she's allowed to say, or maybe talk to Jagmeet Singh. So understand the NDP, again, is not like other parties, and I'm not blowing smoke. Their stuff is online. You can download the NDP constitution and see what their rules and bylaws are. And holy cow, it's just one big socialist organization, one big group, and there's no independent thought allowed. So keep that in mind when she starts talking, she starts pretending that she would stand up for Alberta. No, she'll do whatever the federal party tells her in the end. There's a candidate I haven't mentioned a couple of times. He's been on the show and I've known him a long time. Joseph Bask bringing up, Todd Lowen. He's another one running. He's still an independent MLA right now. I don't believe they've let him back in caucus officially yet. He got kicked out by Jason Kenney. And I believe he's met the bar, so he'll be in there. And that's a different voice. He's been on the show. He's a unique sort of candidate in that way. I mean, he's from inside yet outside at the same time. He's in the race as well. And let's see, what else have we got here? We're sick of the excuse of a tough childhood for murder. Yeah, that's from Marvin and Sherry Stewart. And and that's something that Arthur kind of said along the lines too. There's a lot of people had some really tough childhoods and they didn't commit murder. I mean, it could certainly, I think, if you abuse children, you're going to increase the likelihood that they're going to have a lot of problems and become potentially dangerous down the road. But it's not an excuse. We got to stop using it for an excuse. And the same thing when we let people out based on, mental health, like they're not criminally responsible for something if they're insane. Well, fair enough. But again, it doesn't mean they aren't dangerous. And it doesn't mean you have to let them out right away. It just means that, they weren't in their right mind, and maybe we can medicate and treat these people, but you don't let them out right away. I still worry, thankfully, to this day, as far as I know, that crazy man who ate a guy on a Greyhound bus, he's out walking the streets. He has been for a few years, and it sounds like he hasn't reoffended, or at least we haven't heard of it. And let's just hope it keeps that way. But again, just because a person isn't responsible for something doesn't mean they aren't dangerous. What else we got here? Lots of comments. Boy, you guys are busy with each other today. I'm trying to keep up. All right. So let's see what else is in the news. Brad saying Cory has nicer hair than Trudeau. Oh, I don't think so. As much as that hammerhead went and cut it in the Dumb and Dumber cut there, I think he did it himself. I think maybe Sophie turned her back on him and he got a hold of the scissors and thought, hey, I got a good idea. And he went at it, and that's the mess he was left with. Mine's gray, wiry, and does whatever the hell it wants. But hey, I knew guys who were bald 20 years younger than I am. I won't complain about the hair I've got. And Trudeau's hair, it's amazing. He doesn't even have a single gray. Kind of wonder whether there might be a little color involved in there. But the funny thing is, and I know it sounds petty and everything, but when we're talking about Trudeau's hair, and it's supposed to be serious with politics and things like that, but we got to remember that he built his career around his hair. He built his career around being pretty. He had the flowing locks. He was the federal Fabio. He'd make the middle-aged mamas in Toronto weak-kneed, and you'd have to have mops following them when Trudeau would pass their way. I mean, just look at how Rosie Barton bats her eyes and simpers whenever she mentions his name. And the one asset he had, it's not like he could stun them with his brilliance, his discourse, his ideas. He had his hair and his prettiness. Well, now he went and screwed with that. Moron. So he's not doing himself favors. Again, most politicians, if they cut their hair differently, people wouldn't really take much notice or say much about it. But when your hair was actually a large part of who you are, it's saying something. If you look it up, check out that video where his eyebrows seem to be sliding off and creeping. I mean, people keep saying it was just shadowing and lighting, but I don't know. I wouldn't put it beyond the peckerhead having perhaps tried to light a barbecue or do something like the commoners and blew his eyebrows off and glued on fake ones for a while until he could grow them back. I don't know. If you've ever had a drunk and shave their eyebrows off, sorry about that. You learn eyebrows take a really long time to grow back. Let's see. Here's some stating the obvious from the federal government. Just going through some news stuff now. And Cabinet Agricultural Minister Marie-Claude Bibeau, probably somebody who's never actually been on a farm, but she's the agricultural minister. And they acknowledged that that they can't control food prices. The cabinet has minimal control anyway. That's yes and no. One of the ways they can control food prices is just get the hell out of the way. Get out of the way. Get rid of the fertilizer taxes. Get rid of the carbon taxes. Get rid of a lot of the regulations. Get rid of the BS. And it will lead to food prices coming down from farmers. And get rid of supply management. They also acknowledge, the federal regulators raise the prices for milk and butter higher than a rate of general inflation because they actually control. So you can't pretend you don't control food prices when you literally, by legislation, do control those food prices. Those particular ones, dairy and chicken and turkey. So don't make your excuses, guys. If you want to be free of that responsibility, I'm all with you. Dissolve supply management. Get the hell out of the food business and let it land where it will. Get out. Government makes things worse every time. So just stop. Just stop. Let's see. There's an MP who pleaded guilty to a breach of the Defense Act and doesn't get automatic expulsion. I guess he's got to be stripped by a House vote. Well, I don't know. This is, I guess, getting into some federal politics and inside ball, but there's truth to it. You don't want it easy to throw a person out of elected office. I mean, we want the means to, but we don't want to make it easy. I'm just seeing. Oh, okay. I see my guest in the lobby there, actually, Dr. Gunnink. So we'll bring her in. I mean, I'm glad we could recover this because I'd been wanting to speak to her. Maybe we had some confusion on the time zones or something. So we'll pop her in because at least I'm glad we've got her in, and we'll talk about what we wanted to. So hello, Dr. Gunnink. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much, Cory. I apologize. I thought you were adding me into it, so that's great. No problem.
Yeah. No, we'd had it scheduled actually for a while back, but okay. Well, we've got you.
Yes.
Which is good. I've been rambling incoherently at everybody for some time now. They're eager for a different voice and changing.
For sure.
So you are your specialty is in early childhood care and development, and you've been outspoken about. I mean, we've got a government daycare plan that's supposed to bring about $10 a day daycare for everybody.
Yes.
But there's not been a real good uptake on it, and it doesn't seem to be working out well for a lot of private providers.
Exactly. So the entire deal is premised on the goal to bring forth a national daycare or childcare system across the country, decreasing childcare costs, increasing accessibility for families, and incentivizing quality through grants. That would be the goals provincially. But what's important to remember is that it's an example of what we call a redistributive policy. It was efficient. We did see a quick turnaround of childcare funding in the hands of families. However, some childcare entrepreneurs who were in the process of building out spaces, signing contracts, getting their fire and health collateral, they arrive at the licensing stage only to be told, you can't no longer be in this childcare deal, when others are going to be receiving affordability grants for their families. So the lack of sector-wide consultation, the lack of transparency in the process has been quite difficult for childcare operators, and as well. We are now subject to a lot of strings that we weren't quite aware of, and so I hope that we can unpack that today together.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm looking at a story, for example, out of Toronto, with only 17% of their licensed daycares have signed up for it so far. But then the people who are regular customers who might be bringing their children back again to these centers, or already, they're starting to ask the operators questions. Well, why am I not paying $10 a day for my care? And 80% of them aren't signed up. And so there's a lack of clarity in the ability to qualify, is it?
Yes, so I can't speak to the Ontario deal per se. I can speak to what we experienced in Alberta. There seemed to be a rush to get us to sign into this deal, and but there wasn't the transparency of what would this mean down the road for private providers. So here are a few issues with this deal. First is that we are now subject to a control framework that's going to be implemented in 2023. So the government is going to be able to tell us how we can spend the public funding that we are receiving, and through a bit of a cost control framework. We're not really privy yet to what the final framework will be, but we are definitely going to be subject to some control. We also cannot grow organically. So as private operators, the spots available for growth, for expansion, is limited. It's not really clear how many there will be. However, the government is going to be expanding about 42,000 spaces in nonprofit over the next few years, and for profit is not really clear. So if we have organic growth within our communities, demand, we cannot respond to it. And we're already seeing in particular communities, families are being waitlisted, and as private operators, we cannot respond to this need or this demand.
Yeah, I mean, it's to draw a bit of an analogy, and I know it's different province by province, but it seems similar to like when rent controls are applied. I mean, they come to a conclusion, people can't afford rent, thus the government's got to get in there and deal with the larger landlords, and we're going to control it. And they'll even say, we might subsidize those landlords, but what happens is they mess around in the market, and you actually end up with less rental property available. Yes. So it doesn't matter how low the rent is. If there's none available, people are in trouble.
Yes, and the other issue too is there will be inevitably winners and losers as the government is determining which entrepreneurs are going to expand spaces and in what community when their plans are in place related to the spaces that are allowed to open under the private sector in a given year. This is not equitable. As you can imagine, it will likely drive a lobby industry with the most influential and powerful fighting for spaces rather than, again, what I speak of, this organic and free enterprise growth, pivoting and reacting to creating spaces and programming based on the needs of families in their community. You're going to see generally a decline of growth and private capital investment in the sector, and this is really unfortunate. What I think is sad is that the rights, interest, and vocation of entrepreneurs, the years of laboring, service, and sacrifice, the risks that these entrepreneurs took related to capital investment, often against their own personal assets, were certainly not considered in this deal. We needed a deal that actually fought for a win-win solution for all stakeholders in the sector, not just parents, and not mere our inclusion in a deal that comes with significant strings attached, determining how we can run our business in the future. This isn't in keeping with free market and free enterprise or entrepreneurship. We're creating a bit of an inequality in across sector and primarily in a female industry where as entrepreneurs we're not allowed to grow or we don't have the capacity for that expansion anymore, or we're going to be significantly restrained in how we operate our businesses. So this is quite an overreach and the scapegoating of private businesses. We see it in other sectors as well, and I think it's a signpost of what may come across other industries. So we need to look at this more carefully. We can't just be upset because there's a cap on oil and gas and forget to look at, but actually we did cap our private entrepreneurs in childcare. It's quite incongruent. We can't speak of setting up shop abroad and talk about luring or incentivizing business and capital investment in Alberta, and we're capping our own entrepreneurs in the childcare industry. We've always had a mixed model and mixed economy approach. We honor the net benefits that our entrepreneurs are bringing to the economy here in Alberta. So I'm not really quite sure how we can speak of reducing red tape, but then we're implementing regulatory burdens to childcare operators. I don't understand how we can talk about female empowerment, but now we are hampering the empowerment and career advancement and our entrepreneurial endeavors of the many childcare entrepreneurs in the sector. It doesn't quite make sense. We didn't have to sign into this deal at all.
So this some jurisdictional questions, I guess. Like, this was a federal program, but it was kind of imposed on the provinces. Alberta wasn't really that willing, but basically they were saying, well, either you embrace it or we'll just give the money to somebody else. So it kind of put them into a rock and a hard place. But who do you deal with as an operator in Alberta, for example? Then is it an Alberta government agency for your regulation, or is it a federal one?
Yes, we deal with the Children's Services Ministry. Yes, so it's a provincial jurisdiction. And I contend that we really didn't have to take on this deal. We could have built our own system. We just don't have the political leadership, the innovation in the policy environment or the political will to actually build our own. We could have seen our families funded 3 years ago already through subsidies or grants that would have allowed them to be paying $10 a day. We didn't need to cede provincial jurisdiction. We have the capacity to build this internally. It will require political will. It will require some work and some creativity, and also this respecting the role of government, the role of civil society, the role of market coming together, and actually understanding social entrepreneurship for answering and coming up with policy inputs that deal with social challenges and complexities in a multifaceted way, not simply constantly, government run program, or make it public, make it universal, because then we will deal with quality issues, or then we will deal with inequality. There are quite a few false premises that belie this whole quest that we also need to be talking about and having public discourse over, because if we truly want to see change and affordability for families, we need to have a multi-pronged approach that includes market, civil society, and government, not just government alone.
So are there conditions then? Like, is there certain ways that a facility has to qualify before they can apply or be able to get the funding then? Or is it just kind of, as long as you're licensed, you can be part of the program?
When it was originally rolled out, all current licensed programs were able to be included in this grant. Right now, moving forward, only those who are opening spaces under a nonprofit corporate structure are able to open spaces and be licensed. So, or actually they're able to be under this childcare deal and pass on the subsidies and grants to families. Anybody can open a childcare center in the province currently, it just might mean that they're not going to be part of the deal. And so the daycare across the street might be offering $450 in grants, while you have to offer full pricing. So you can already imagine that that competition will be stiff, and families might not choose your location based on the fact that they can't quite get the grants.
So what do you propose as a solution, though? Like, should the government just kind of back out of this program altogether, or change it? How can this be addressed? That's the big question.
Yes. So I think when we understand the false premises on which this is based, that that quality is a factor of the care that is provided, and not necessarily corporate structure. When we are able to understand, for example, that the price point is not high, or childcare costs have not increased because of the for-profit operators entering the market, but pricing is a factor of real estate costs, salaries, and utilities, and food. So it doesn't discriminate regardless of or based on corporate structure, right? So when we begin to understand the premises on which this is based, and we're able to move away from some of these, the foundational framework of women's equality movement, of feminist politics, of social justice, but actually anchor the way that we look at our children, the way that we look at family life, I think we can build a system that is far more holistic and integrative, that considers the ecology, what we call the ecology of children's lives, their nested reality. So their reality within the family, within care structures, their reality within community, where they are interacting intergenerationally, because right now we are seeing a breakdown in intergenerational constellation. So why not build a far more comprehensive system? Why not begin with the answer, what is in the best interest of children, which guides our Alberta family law? Why not ask the question, what is a quality of life look like for our children, rather than simply simplistically, myopically focusing on childcare? Let's place children, create a childcare system for children. How about the entirety of family life, and start there? And so do I believe we can back out? I'm not sure what the clauses are. I'm not sure if the province is able to cancel the deal, but I do believe that Alberta is uniquely positioned in a way, economically, socially, where we can construct something entirely new, something entirely innovative, if we have the leadership, if we have the will to do so. And I think that if we presented something to our communities that looks far more holistic for children's optimal development, that takes care of family life, of children in parenting, in attachments, in community life, their visibility, that we are caring for those families who truly need the $10 a day, or even free daycare, because they need this support. When we're looking at immigrant families, when we're looking at refugee families, we have a holistic system, not simply an institutionalizing approach, or highly regulating the lives of our children and the lives of those who care for them. That's not the answer. So I'm really confused and surprised that this is the road we actually took, as opposed to saying, no, I think that we have the ability to build our own. Maybe I'm idealistic, but we do need to start with new ideas for all of these complex societal challenges that we are presented with. It cannot be about creating a childcare system. It does not lead necessarily to quality if we are not accounting for what I just had said, is that ecology of childhood, the entirety of children's lives, their communal interaction, intergenerational interaction. So So we need to go back to the drawing board and have a greater public discourse about what it means to care for our children and give them a good quality of life. Does it look like institutionalizing them? What could it look like alternatively? And then we start there, and then we absolutely mobilize our financing, our social programs to answer the complexity with which our society finds itself in, and in the care of our children. I hope that makes sense somewhat.
Well, still some. So we're kind of up against the clock now. So where can people find more information on what you're doing and about these programs and things like that in general? Is there a website they could go to?
Right now, I do post my thoughts on meaningmakersglobal.com. I am very much interested in the arts and cultural development of children. So the community can contact me, but I am very much involved in advocacy for childcare operators. I am involved in this leadership contest right now because I do believe that we need new leadership for the future. We cannot simply continue to go to government as the solution for our challenges. And we seem to kind of really want government to be funding everything, government to be providing the solutions, when the solutions are nestled within our daily lives, within our communities, our social structures already. And so I hope that if anybody wants to contact me, they can do so through my website, meaningmakersglobal.com, or contact me through the various connections. I'm sure some people watching already know me, so they're welcome to continue these conversations. Yes. So thank you for this opportunity, Cory.
Great, thank you. And we'll talk again down the road, and hopefully we can come up with a good policy somehow. It's costing a lot of money.
Oh, for sure. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye. So that was Dr. Amoriza Gunnink, and so she's a private daycare provider, early learning and things like that. And there is a convoluted program. People have been hearing about that. Basically Trudeau imposed it on us. He said, look, if we're basically going to give the money to someone else if you don't take it, but we're going to force you to bring in a government-run childcare program. And it doesn't sound like it's working out that well. AB Free, why don't you interview more doctors such as those warning people about some of the things with the vaccines? We do with some. I don't do it on this show. Watch for a lot of Melanie's interviews. She does a lot of she talks to some great people and things like that. An issue we've had, and I've talked about that on here before, particularly with this show because it's live, is we get kicked off our social media platforms. We get punted. I got kicked off of YouTube, a little while back, or the Western Standard did. We were suspended for a few weeks. If we get one more, we're off permanently. I mean, I do encourage people to get on and watch on Rumble. A lot more are now, and that's great. But it does limit us. So those particular interviews we don't run on this show. We do have them, but I just can't at this point, or we risk too much. Unfortunately, we're a little beholden to those giants because a lot of our viewers come from some of those small amount of platforms, but we do cover those. And of course, there's a lot of stories on it. And Sanenko saying YouTube censorship. Yeah, it is. And they're the worst of the bunch. I mean, all of them have their things, but YouTube is terrible. And you just say a combination of the wrong words and their algorithms will grab you, and suddenly you're suspended and you're done. Hopefully we get more and more free, and we get more social media platforms that can open up and do these things, and we'll all be better off for it. All right, so we'll be talking tomorrow with Franco Terrazzano from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He's a regular on here. And of course, there's always lots to talk about. Our government is flushing our money every way they can. And I'm going to have Dave Makachuk coming on. He's our Western Standard columnist, and he'll discuss some of his more recent columns and things, and came live from Paris the last time we had him on in here. Now he's back in Canada. And of course, there's going to be other news and items and things to cover. So thank you all for tuning in today, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. sharp.